Hey folks, welcome back. Today we're talking about practice. Not a game, we're talking about practice, as Allen Iverson once said. Today what we're going to break down is I'm going to give you the 4 key components that I think are non-negotiables when it comes to setting up your practice station. And this doesn't matter if you're a casual player that hits golf balls once a month or you're a player that works in your game every day. Especially, and as you can tell, I'm indoors now, but when we start to get into the off season, people like to keep their games in shape, which I think is fantastic. But if we're not careful, the way that we practice can actually make us worse. And a lot of it comes from some super simple things that have to do with the way that we set up our workstation and what things we have laid down. I call it a workstation, practice station, whatever you want to call it. But today what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down the 4 things that you should set up before every single one of your practice sessions. So let's get into it. So if you look down here, what I have is I have 2 alignment rods set up. At a bare minimum, I hope you're the type of player that at least has 1 alignment rod set down. Main reason why is we're looking for our lower body alignment. It's amazing how many players spend so much time complaining about their ball flight, even if they make acceptable contact, but they never spend time considering where their body is actually pointing. And I know even when we're indoors and we have this beautiful bay that's perfectly squared off, everything is aligned, but it is shocking how often we still have players that will come in that I'll have them even with an alignment rod down, they'll come in and they'll have their trail foot inches further back than their lead foot or vice versa. If your lower body alignment is off, that affects your takeaway, it affects your club path, it affects almost everything in our golf swing. So the first one we have to do is we have to have an alignment rod down parallel to our target line. Target line I'm going to talk about last because I'm going to flip the angle. But right now the thing that we need to do is I have a target somewhere on that screen, and wherever I'm aiming, I want to make sure that my toe line is running parallel to that. So that's the first thing that we have to do. The second one, I already have it on here, and I actually talked about it last week if you watched my previous video or read my previous email, is we talk about stance width. And the thing that I mentioned is I believe too many people have a stance that's way too narrow. If you want to learn more about it, go back to last week's video and I talk about stance width. But with this alignment rod, what I also have is I have 2 pieces of tape on here for my stance width, because I know that with my irons, I'm looking for a stance width that's roughly 16 inches wide, because that's how wide my shoulders are. And I want my feet to be shoulder width apart. So now when I come down here, I set up my alignment rod. I do a quick check back here to make sure that's parallel to where I'm aiming, and it is. And now when I come in, once I set my grip and I get set up to this golf shot, I'm looking to see that my big toes on both feet are touching that tape. And now I'm just 2 seconds into my golf setup, and I know what my stance width is, and I know where I'm lined up. I'm already off to a great start. So we have lower body alignment and we have stance width. The third one that we're going to talk about, which again has a huge influence on a lot of things, is ball position. So once you have this toe line alignment rod set up, all you want to do is you want to set up the second alignment rod perpendicular so it makes a T. And especially if you hit balls off of a mat or if you hit balls indoor, the great part is that you don't have to move it because we're not making divots, different things like that. We can always hit from the same spot, which is great. Similar to our toe alignment, if we continue to set up open or close, that can drastically affect our ball flight. Think of like this negative compounding effect if we have alignment that's too open and let's say a ball position that's too far forward. Let's say you're a player that you struggle coming over the top, or let's say at a minimum you swing across, you cut across the golf ball too much. If you come in here with no alignment rods and you're not checking these things, you could spend all winter hitting golf shots with an open stance and a golf ball that's too far forward. That's only going to make your miss worse. So once we have these set up, all we have to do now is if I have a mid iron or a long iron, I just move the alignment rod forward relative to my 2 marks for my stance width. And then if I have a mid iron or a short iron, I just move it back. So the iron that I have in my hand right now is I have a 6 iron. And I always want my ball position slightly ahead of center with a 6 iron. So I'm just going to come down, I'm going to set my alignment rod up. And then now every single shot that I hit, I'm just going to put my ball just line with that yellow rod. So now when I come in to hit this golf shot, after I've set my grip, I step to the golf ball with the appropriate stance width, and I make sure that my toe alignment is good. And now just getting into that golf shot, I know my ball position, I know my alignment, I know my stance width. Those are three extremely important things, and I cannot emphasize it enough. This is a time in the off season, or for us, we're in the month of November, where I'm starting to see a lot of my players, as we start to get into the off season, want to make changes to our golf swing. Any change we want to make has to be built off of a solid foundation. And when I'm looking at things like stance width, ball position, and alignment, those are three huge fundamentals. Become a master at these. There's so many cool things we want to do with taking it inside, shallowing the golf club, not coming over the top, all those things. We want to do all of those. But before we do that, we have to make sure we know where our alignment is, how wide our stance is, and where our ball position is, because those will affect our change in a positive way if we know where they are, or a negative way, or if we don't know where they are. So last one, let's flip the camera angle, let's talk about start line. All right, so last component is going to be talking about start line. So we see that I've added an alignment rod here. So we have our alignment rod for our toe line, but I also talked about start line. When I talk about start line, we're talking about the golf ball. And especially when we're indoors, this ball's only flying 10 feet, then it's hitting a screen. And I know that some of us have the access to tech to get ball flight, but I know that a lot of you are hitting into a net or a screen at home and you don't always get the ball flight. So this is a very important one to nail, because I think for a lot of players, this can also fall in the category of, if we spend all winter not paying attention to it, we will be stunned, usually in a positive or in a negative way, when we get out on the golf course, what change we see. So I'm a drawer of the golf ball. So that means for me that if I want my ball to land on this white line, it better start right at the target and then draw back. If I was a fade player, I would want my ball to start left of the target. The reason why I'm saying this right now is when I'm working on start line, if I was to hit a golf shot and if it hits the dead middle of the screen, I know that it's going to finish left of my target because it started at my target. It did not start right of my target to take account for the curve. All this to say, when you're practicing based on your ball flight, you need to be aware of where your ball needs to start. And again, we've got this beautiful screen with this fantastic technology. It doesn't mean we just fire a million balls into the middle of the net or into the middle of the screen. I need you to be aware of that. So as you're going through your process, I stood back here when I set up this alignment rod. And now that I know where my target is, the visual that I have is that I want my ball to start to the right of this orange rod. And ideally, I'm looking for it to hit the screen a little bit right of the center line. So now as we've built this station, we've got four things, right? We come in, grip first, we set up. I now have my stance width, my ball position, my toe alignment, but then also where I'm looking for this shot to hit the screen. Remember, I'm a drawer of the golf ball, so I want to start to the right. So as I would go through, I'm going to set up. I've got all my things set up here. Now I'm ready to give myself the best chance at a good golf shot. So it started a little bit right and then drew back. That's a first take. That's actually, remember that, sports fans. So I knew where everything was set up. I knew the setup I was looking for, and I knew where I wanted my ball to start. There's four things. Don't be sloppy, don't be lazy. Become really, really, really good at making sure you have these in order before you start your practice, every single shot. Where are we lining up our toes? What's our stance width? Where's our ball position? And then last one, when we hit this ball on the screen, where do we expect it to start? If you have any questions, please let me know. I hope that this helps you kickstart what your off season is going to look like. Thanks for watching, folks. Have a great day.